If you've ever felt uncomfortable when your birthday arrives, or you've been called selfish for not wanting to celebrate, you're not alone. Many people find themselves completely indifferent to birthdays, not because they're broken or emotionally unavailable, but because their brains are wired differently. You're not struggling with a character flaw. You're experiencing something that psychology is only beginning to understand. The truth is that people who ignore birthdays possess a unique cognitive framework that actually reveals something rare and valuable about how they experience meaning, connection, and identity. In this video, we're going to explore what that actually means and why your mind works the way it does. In this video, we're exploring 5 rare traits that define the mindset of people who genuinely don't care about birthdays. If you've ever been called indifferent, selfish, or emotionally detached for skipping your own celebration, or if you felt confused about why others make such a big deal out of aging one year, this is for you. By the end of this, you'll understand that your perspective isn't a limitation. It's a completely different way of processing meaning and connection in your life. Here's what's happening in your brain when you don't care about birthdays. Most people are milestone-oriented. They organize their lives around specific markers. Birthdays, anniversaries, holidays. These external dates create psychological anchors that help them construct narrative meaning in their lives. But your brain works differently. You experience time as a continuous flow rather than as discrete numbered chapters. You might find yourself unable to feel the significance of turning 25 or 40 because you don't perceive a meaningful difference between December 31st and January 1st. It's arbitrary. This isn't apathy. This is what psychologists call temporal non-anchoring. Your mind naturally resists artificial markers because you're attuned to the actual ongoing experience of being alive, not symbolic moments. This trait means you're likely less influenced by external social markers and more grounded in genuine internal experience. Your perception isn't flawed, it's rare. You're operating with a psychological perspective that allows you to see through cultural constructs and experience reality more directly. This makes you less susceptible to social pressure and more authentic in how you move through the world. When most people hit a birthday, they're prompted to ask themselves, who am I becoming? They use birthdays to mark personal evolution and growth. But if you ignore birthdays, you likely define your identity differently. You see yourself as fundamentally consistent. Your sense of self is rooted in who you are right now, not in who you're becoming. You might find yourself frustrated by the cultural narrative that says you should reassess your life annually. Your identity doesn't need yearly recalibration because it's already integrated into how you move through each day. Psychology calls this trait stable self-concept. And here's the strength in this. People with this mindset experience less existential anxiety around aging. You're not haunted by the question of whether you've accomplished enough by a certain age. You're not comparing yourself against invisible timelines. Instead, you're grounded in the actual reality of who you are, regardless of what number you're about to turn. This is a form of psychological resilience. Your mind naturally protects you from the neurotic patterns that plague people who are constantly measuring their lives against external standards. You're simply being yourself, consistently, which is rarer than you might think. Here's something important. If you ignore birthdays, you don't do it because you lack the capacity for connection. In fact, the opposite is often true. Your brain actually screens out social conventions that feel hollow. You might find yourself confused by birthday parties because they feel performative. You'd rather spend genuine time with people who matter throughout the year than celebrate forced intimacy on a designated date. This isn't coldness. This is what psychologists call authentic relational orientation. You naturally seek depth over ritual. When you do spend time with the people you care about, it's because you actually want to, not because the calendar tells you to. You're resistant to manufactured meaning, which means that when you do create meaning with someone, it's genuine. Your relationships aren't structured by external obligations. They're built on actual choice and actual presence. This makes your connections more resilient because they're not dependent on remembering dates or performing gratitude on schedule. Your loved ones either matter to you year-round, or the birthday doesn't change that. This is a sophisticated form of emotional intelligence. You're fundamentally honest about how relationships work, and that honesty creates stronger bonds. Most people feel birthday expectations deeply. There's a social script. You're supposed to celebrate yourself. You're supposed to feel special. You're supposed to gather people to acknowledge you exist another year. If you ignore birthdays, your brain doesn't activate that conformity pressure in the same way. You're neurologically less responsive to social pressure on matters that don't align with your internal values. Psychology calls this autonomy-oriented motivation. Your decisions come from internal conviction rather than external expectation. You might find yourself the person who shows up to other people's parties out of genuine care, yet completely unbothered when yours arrives. You're not being difficult or attention-seeking in reverse. You're simply not running the same social scripts in your head that most people are unconsciously running. This trait is rarer than you realize. Many people claim they don't care about birthdays, but they do. They just feel guilty about it. You actually don't. Your mind isn't divided between desire and judgment. You're coherent in your indifference. This is a marker of what researchers call internal locus of control. You're not unconsciously seeking approval or reassurance. You move through the world based on what makes sense to you, not based on what you think you should want. That's a genuine psychological strength in a world designed to make you feel constantly inadequate. Here's the deepest trait. If you ignore birthdays, your brain is wired to measure meaning differently than most people. You're not moved by symbolic moments because you don't derive significance from arbitrary dates. Instead, you measure value through intrinsic experience. A meaningful day is meaningful because of what you actually do and feel, not because of what date it falls on. You might find yourself completely satisfied going to work on your birthday, or spending it exactly like any other day. That's not emotional avoidance. That's your brain refusing to create artificial significance where none exists. Psychology recognizes this as intrinsic meaning-making. Most people need external structure to feel that their lives matter. You construct meaning from internal sources. You don't need a special day to know you're worthy. You don't need other people's acknowledgement to feel like you exist. This is genuinely rare psychological territory. It means you're protected from a particular form of existential anxiety that traps many people in patterns of seeking external validation. Your mind naturally looks inward for meaning, which means you're less vulnerable to depression tied to unmet social expectations. You're less likely to feel invisible or unvalued because you're not waiting for external circumstances to confirm your worth. If you've ever been made to feel selfish or broken for not caring about birthdays, you now understand what's actually happening. Your mind isn't malfunctioning. You're experiencing time, identity, connection, and meaning through a fundamentally different psychological lens. The truth is that people who ignore birthdays possess a rare form of psychological autonomy. You move through the world based on genuine internal conviction rather than social scripts. You experience meaning directly rather than through symbolic moments. You connect authentically rather than through obligation. These aren't character flaws. They're markers of a rare mindset that allows you to live with more internal coherence and less existential anxiety than most people experience. If this video helped you understand yourself better, subscribe for more psychology insights that explain who you really are.